Okay, so we're going over feedback from the test. Interestingly enough, all my little kiddos in the musical, nobody emailed me to remind me to record. Do you guys remember that discussion? Sad day. Not one single little kidlet came to tell me. Good thing I remembered. Okay, so multiple choice on this went pretty well. I don't really, there's two that I think are worth discussing, and the rest I think with the notes as your resource, you could probably figure it out. So number 4, which of the following statements about the correlation is not true? If you got that one wrong, and you think you figured it out, what do you think it is? C. Correlation is a good way to assess the form of an association. So this one is kind of subtle. The thing with correlation is that your relationship has to be linear. You only calculate correlation for linear relationships. So it's not a good way to assess form because you are working from the premise that it is linear. So changing the units of x or y does not affect it. That is true. Correlation can be 0 even when there is strong association. You have had a problem on this, and I believe it was like gas mileage and speed, and your scatter plot looked like this. This is strong association with an R of 0. So everybody that got this wrong, I think everybody but one person chose B, and really it's C as in Charlie. It's not a good way to assess the form of a relationship because we only run it if the form is linear. Are we okay on that one now? So remember, when you do your multiple choice, when you correct your multiple choice, you need to give an explanation of why yours is wrong and why C is right. So B is true because of this picture, and you cannot just draw this picture. You have to clearly explain. This is a scatter plot that has strong association, but an R of 0. And you need to clearly explain that correlation is not a good way to assess form because correlation is only applied to linear relationships. We're okay on that one now? Okay, number 7. You guys did a lot better on number 7 than most classes have done in the past. The biggest thing that you need to look out for on number 7 is that these are all residual plots. So, conclusion that a linear model between the variable is supported by which plots? You are looking only for the plots that show random scatter. So because those are all residual plots, you would not choose C. C is not random scatter. And it shows a linear pattern, but you have to keep in mind that that's a residual plot. You're not looking for a linear pattern in a residual plot. You are looking for a linear pattern in a scatter plot. Are we okay on those ones? If you need help with your other ones, I can help you with that one, with those. Just come up and see me. A couple of them were in your reviews, so like I'm pretty sure 9 and 10 were review questions. I don't think I've done that up until this point, but I typically will include like a multiple choice from your review. Sometimes I include part of a free response from your review. because I want you to be making the connection that the review can really help prep you for your exam. So then moving into the free response, the best feedback that I can give you on the free response is if you are going to redo, and remember, redo means I erase it and I redo it. I don't just jam things in there to make it right. I would go off of your phrases to memorize. The biggest issue with number 1 was that when you guys were defining your variables, y hat is predicted attendance per game. And if you did not use the word predicted, then you missed the points, missed all of the points for that part of the problem, even if it's the only thing that you left out. Because unfortunately, that's how harshly your AP graders will grade. B, identify the slope. I was extremely impressed with how many of you guys said slope equals 235 and then interpreted, because that really made me feel like you guys did the optional review and you saw the feedback, and that was, I feel like, such a huge win for you guys that you were applying the things that you saw. So good job on that if you were able to do that. 2, calculate the residual. I don't feel like there were issues with that. Either you know how to calculate a residual or you don't, and most of the interpretations were very, very close. So 2 did not have much of an issue. 3, though, was kind of a sad day because it asks you for 2 separate things. It asks you to find the value of the correlation. And what lots of you guys forgot was that when you calculate R, it is plus or minus the root of your R squared. So what should the sign of this correlation be? Based off your scatter plot, is your correlation plus or minus? It is minus. You are seeing a negative relationship for the physics majors, which means that when you calculate your R, it should be negative. And then the second portion went really well for almost everybody. There is I think it was moderately strong negative linear association between the number of semesters and starting salaries, and you really should have put 4 physics majors. So if you have to correct this problem, make sure that if you left it off the first time through, you add it in now. You did not get marked off if you didn't specify 4 physics majors, but you will on the redo, because I'm very explicitly telling you right now that you need to have it. Since this will be posted for our musical classmates, if you're worried that you're going to leave something out that I'm talking about now, just look up the recording when I post it into Canvas. So this one was okay. S, linear model, predict. I feel like this one went fine. Either you knew how to interpret S or you didn't. So the only issue on this page was either you knew the phrases to memorize or you didn't know the phrases to memorize. Not very many people got the part B wrong, but just remember, if it asks you if a linear model is appropriate, you always want to refer to the residual plot. Always refer to residual. For C, right at the very end, it sneaks in, comment on the reliability of this prediction. And almost all of you guys were aware that you need to talk about extrapolating. But what some of you guys forgot was that they were asking you if your prediction was reliable. So you had to indicate that no, it's not reliable because we're not extrapolating. You may not go because you need lots of these corrections. No offense. So wait till we're done. Are we okay on this one? Yes? Okay, last page was secretly the easiest page. So number or letter A, does P exercise a large influence on the regression line? The answer is yes. Now, we've talked about this a few times. If they're going to give you data, you need to use the data in your response. So even though lots of you guys said R decreases, R squared decreases, slope changes, y-intercept changes, you actually needed to use specific values. So you needed to say R squared decreases from 48% to only 2%. S stays about the same, your slope becomes less steep, your y-intercept increases a little bit, and then you want to give values. So my feedback here is you needed to mention 2 of slope, y-intercept, R, or R squared. And then you needed to use specific values. Specific. So if you didn't have to mention all 4, you needed to have at least 2 of slope, y-intercept, R, R squared, and use the specific values. So R squared decreases, and y-intercept increases, or whatever you want to use. B, they were looking for 2 specific things. And really the only 2 things that you can speak to are slope and y-intercept. Because what they basically did was they took point P. It's in the same exact position as the previous problem. They just moved it down to the bottom. So your x value is the same, your y value is different. Well, it is the outlier here that is giving the appearance of a positive correlation. Without that, P, what you have here just looks like a vertical football to me. So when you move that point to the bottom, it now gives the appearance of a negative association, which means that your slope changes sign. It does not become smaller. You don't know the steepness of your slope, whether it changed or did not change. So just because it turns negative does not mean it's smaller. So you don't want to say slope decreases. You want to say your slope turns negative or becomes negative, or your association is negative now instead of positive. But you do not want to say that your slope is smaller. Your y-intercept definitely increases. On the actual grading for this, you needed to have both. Like, this is a previously released free response problem. For you guys, you only needed to have 1, and it needed to be slope. If you included both, A+, and you should write A+ next to your response. But for us, I only needed to see that you knew slope would go positive to negative. The other thing that is worth mentioning is you probably should not comment on S or R, because in this case, we don't know for sure if R strengthens or weakens because this relationship is a blob. So how can we say that this blob with this outlier is any stronger than this blob with this outlier? Do you guys see what I'm saying? So I would not comment on R in part B because they're asking you to compare this R to this R, and you don't have specific data for that. You only have data for R with P and without P, not data for with P and then with Q. So R, I personally don't think that R would change except for the sign. If this R is, or if this R squared is 47.6, I'd be willing to bet that this R squared is probably very close to 47.6, which means your R values are the same, the strength is the same, the direction is different. And because of that, it's probably better for you to just mention slope and y-intercept. Are we okay on all those corrections? Yeah? Okay, would you like a minute?